Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be talking about nail polishes that I wish would come back. If you're familiar with the indie nail polish community, you know that the unfortunate truth is that a lot of indie releases are like bespoke batches or just limited edition where they just can't be kept around for long, usually because the indie brands are like operating out of their homes and they just don't have, you know, the space to keep all of their inventory for years and years. So at some point, the releases will be retired and phased out. The good news is that because the market is so saturated these days, we definitely see a lot of overlap and a lot of similar shades being put out, which makes sense because there's only like so many pigments and things that the makers can use. But there are still some older releases that I feel like there either hasn't been like a good enough dupe for it, or I just haven't come across another shade like it, and I just would love to see it come back. I'm definitely a fan of brands bringing back these older popular shades from their previous collections just to give newer customers a chance to grab them. So I wanted to talk about a few of the shades that have been on my radar, and of course I would love to know some of yours, but for now, let's just get into it. So first up, I do have two polishes that I actually have in my collection, but I still would love to see them come back, mainly for other people. And the first one that I have is Mooncat's Ocean Lies. This one came out when they were still under Live Love Polish, and it did make it over to Mooncat's like rebrand, but I feel like it did eventually get retired because they ended up releasing a shade called Mermaid Bait, which is like the slightly more blue version of this color. I think I would say that Mermaid Bait is a little bit more shifty as well, but I still really love this shade so much. I think it's just so beautiful with its like soft turquoise green seafoam leaning base color, and I love the shimmer that it has, how it shifts from like pink to orange and yellow and even green. It is just so pretty, so perfect for all of those like mermaid vibes. And while they have released a number of shades like in this kind of color family, there definitely hasn't been one exactly like this, and I'm just kind of sad about that. I mean, I shouldn't be because obviously I have this bottle and it's still pretty full, like maybe up to here, but I admittedly don't end up reaching for this anymore because I just know I'm gonna run out, especially for like a full manicure. This one is unfortunately a bit more on the sheer side, so it's gonna need like 3 coats to really look nice, and then that uses more polish, and then the faster it's gonna go, the sooner it'll be gone, and I just don't want that to happen. Like, as silly as it sounds, this is one of those shades that I would want to have a backup of, and I heavily debated grabbing one when they announced that it was gonna be retiring, but I didn't end up getting it because I just know with like the size of my collection, there's no way that I'm gonna like actually use the backup even, so it wouldn't be worth it. But at the same time, if they did bring back Ocean Lies, I would probably get it. It's just one of those colors that I'm just like, I really love this shade and I just want a backup. The other shade that I have from them is even older, where it's not a Mooncat color. This originally launched under Live Love Polish and it's called Confetti Dreams. So I've shared this before a couple of times on my channel. I know for sure in like my favorite blues video. And if you're like confused, I did use an old top coat bottle and just poured my bottle of Confetti Dreams into here so the packaging can match. But this is just such a stunning shade of blue. I don't know if I would call it like cobalt exactly, but it's like a really bright, saturated medium tone of blue with a really bright electric blue shimmer and this holographic micro glitter. It is super freaking gorgeous, and I just like love how bold it looks on the nails. It basically is like that shimmer hollow kind of formula that Mooncat has done before, as well as like other brands, but there's something about this, probably the color, that just is so much more like eye-catching, and I just would love to see this one come back. Or I would also be happy if they just kind of brought back this like finish specifically in like other brighter colors or even like darker colors too. I would just love this in like a really dark pine or forest green, even like this eggplanty purple. Oh my gosh, it would just be so freaking pretty. So, you know, I definitely love this for the color, but like if this came back, I wouldn't get a backup of this, but I would be excited for other people to get it. But I definitely would want to see this like finish come back to Mooncat, because I think this is like a little bit more opaque than a lot of their other shimmers, so I think a lot more people would like that. Now, getting into polishes that I don't have in my collection, and therefore I would love to see them come back so I can have the chance to get them. The first polish should not be a surprise, and I know it's gonna be so silly too. I'm like embarrassed to include it because technically I kind of already have it in my collection, and that is Ethereal Polish's Jigglypuff, which I think was from 2022. I don't remember if it was from like Polish Pickup specifically or just one of their own releases, but it is this absolutely beautiful, delicate, soft baby pink with this really bright, like aqua minty kind of shimmer. It is just so up my alley, and I should go back to my like kryptonite polish video to look at the collage and see like what shade is a good enough dupe. But I fear that if that were to come back, I wouldn't even care. Like the logic would just go out the window and I would buy it because it is so pretty. And I also admittedly really love the name. I think Jigglypuff is like such a cute Pokemon, and it's just so perfect. It's just one of those polishes that I'm like, I really want this in my collection. I'm sad I don't have it, even though, again, technically I do have the color more or less. It's just the combination with the name, which I know is like such a silly thing, but you know, that literally is like my weakness. It is my kryptonite polish, so I'm gonna, you know, give myself a little grace for that one. The next shade I want to talk about is Bee's Knees Lacquer We Shall Rise. And I don't remember what year or collection this was from, but it was definitely before I like really got into Bee's Knees. I think it was only last year that I bought my first Bee's Knees polish, which is so crazy, especially if you've like, you know, been in the indie space for the past couple of years, because a few years ago, I feel like Bee's Knees was so talked about. Like they were, I don't want to say overhyped, but the hype for them was real a couple of years ago, and I feel like it's just kind of died down. So I essentially just missed that initial hype around Bee's Knees. I was familiar with like some of their launches, but because they're one of those indie brands that like, you know, is so popular, everybody's talking about them, they would sell out super fast, and so it just, you know, is not really my thing. So I know there's definitely a lot more that I missed out on that would be like so up my alley, but I just remember seeing the swatch of We Shall Rise and just being like, oh my gosh, it is so ethereal and beautiful. As I'm sure you guys know, I am such a fan of like sheer white shimmers. They are so ghostly and just like magical, and admittedly I'm especially a sucker for how it looks on Nicole because it just looks so incredibly glowy. I don't know if it's like her lighting, the darker background that like helps, you know, bring out the glow even more, but that photo, I'm just like, oh my gosh, it is so freaking stunning, and I just want that on my nails. I do feel like the closest shade that I have to it maybe is Mooncat's Ghost of Hecate, because that is like a white jelly base with a really intense bright blue shimmer, and I have worn that before on like one coat for the super sheer ethereal look, but I'm pretty sure the shimmer in Mooncat is like darker, like almost more of a cobalt, as opposed to the more like cyan aqua in Bee's Knees. So that's why I would love to see that one come back, just to have the chance to have this like even brighter kind of blue shimmer. It is just another weakness kind of combination for me, and yeah, I just think it's so stunning. But I don't even want to go down the Bee's Knees rabbit hole of like the older collections, because I know there's like so many good ones, but at the same time I do know that like when I did look at their older releases, there's a lot of overlap again. So, you know, just the reminder of we've probably seen it before, or like we already have something like this in our collection. But I don't know, there's just something so special about this specific shade that I'm like, if that came back, I would probably buy it. Next up, I want to talk about this polish from Illyrian, which I don't even know if they're still around anymore. They definitely were super popular back when like I first joined the indie kind of scene in like 2015, but I feel like they eventually sort of like stopped making polishes. I think they came back for a while, but I don't know if they like stopped again. I admittedly don't really keep up with them, or honestly keep up with like a lot of brands because there's just like so many brands out there. Either way, this polish, I don't know where it's from, when it released. When I've looked up swatches, there's like one photo that I've seen, but I need it, and it's called Molecules. It is like this beautiful, bright aqua kind of base color with this really stunning, contrasting, peachy kind of shimmer. I just love that kind of color combination. It is super, super beautiful. I have a lot of like blues with like a peachy yellow kind of shimmer, but none with like this specific base color, and that's what I'm like so weak for. I don't know how many coats the swatcher did, but it just looks to be on the more opaque side as well, which like I really appreciate in a shimmer. It is just so freaking pretty, and I feel like I haven't seen a polish come out that looks similar to this, so I would love to see that, because I really don't think, unfortunately, that this brand is gonna like come out or at least like bring back this polish. But if you know of a dupe, please let me know. This is probably the top one that I would buy out of my list, just because it would be so unique to my collection. I just need it, okay? This next one pains me a little bit because I feel like I had just missed it, and that one is Potion Polish's Fall Farmhouse. I feel like Potion Polish has definitely been around for a little while, but I only came across them like in the last year, where last fall was the first time I ever ordered from them, and they have some beautiful polishes. I especially love their shimmers that I've tried, but they also have these really beautiful flakies, and Fall Farmhouse is like this coppery multi-chrome, or at least like metallic flaky in this like soft, almost sage green sort of base. It is just so beautiful. I mean, the flakies alone look like autumn leaves, and I just love the contrast of like the softer green base color. So I do remember seeing this one on the website, but it was sold out at least the most recent time when I ordered, which was like in late spring or so. I guess, to be honest, I don't remember if it was available when I made my very first order a year ago, but either way, it's just been like sold out since then. At least I personally don't remember it like coming back in stock, but again, because I don't follow a lot of brands and like keep up with them, I may have missed it, but I was hoping that they would be restocking that shade, and unfortunately it's just not even listed on the website anymore, and it makes me so sad because I feel like I just narrowly missed it. And I know it might seem weird too, because I have mentioned it in a couple of videos already, that like this past year has been kind of a weird year for me and flakies, where I almost feel like I'm more picky about them, or I'm falling out of love with them. This shade just feels like the one that got away, so you know, I'm a little upset about it, but I can only hope that it will come back in the future. But if you happen to have it, or know somebody who has it and is like destashing it, please let me know, because that is a shade that I would love to add to my collection. Lastly, I have a couple of neons that I want to talk about, which is like so funny because it's December and it's actually snowing outside, but I love a good neon. And I mean, I think around the corner is when Cirque does their like survey, where they ask everybody, what shades do we want to see come back in their Vice collection that launches in May. I think this past year they did a survey like just from a social media post, and the year before it was in like an email newsletter. So, you know, if you care about their Vice collection and their neons, I highly would recommend following them and making sure you're up to date with like their social media stuff, because you don't want to miss that, because their Vice collection is definitely like one of the best collections that they do, especially throughout the year. I personally have been really happy with the past couple of Vice collections because I voted on those shades, and so I was happy to see them back. But there are are still a few shades that I missed out on from, you know, previous releases, so I can only hope that they will be voted back in. The top one is Retail Therapy, which should be no surprise because it is this obnoxious hot pink neon. I know it can be a little hard to judge the actual color because obviously with neons, they're just notoriously difficult to capture the correct color or like an accurate color. From what I've seen, it looks to be more of a warmer toned pink, which I really love seeing. I feel like Cirque especially does a lot of cool toned pinks. And while those are pretty and they can be flattering and stuff, a lot of them I feel like can lean into that like orchid pink territory where it's like touching purple. And I just kind of don't love those shades. I just want like a nice, hot, warm pink. And so I feel like Retail Therapy is probably the closest to that compared to a lot of their other pink neons that they've released. So that is one that I will personally be voting for. Another one that I do really love from them that I came out like, I think in 2020 is called Munchies, which seems like such a weird shade. I imagine not many people are gonna be voting for that one. It kind of has that like almost unflattering nacho cheese color, but there's something about it that I think is so freaking beautiful. But yeah, those surveys can be so tough because there's always like so many options and they can only let you choose like one. So I would love to know which are some of your favorite Cirque Vice shades that you would love to see come back next year. And the last few neons that I want to talk about are actually like a whole collection, really. I don't even know like their individual names, but if you're an OG, you know, this is Pipe Dream Polish's A Night in Vegas collection. I remember when these came out and they took the indie community by storm. They were just these most stunning, saturated neons. They were probably like one of the first ones that didn't need a white base to really pop. I think their biggest like claim to fame, if you will, is that they just like water marbled so beautifully, because that's how I remember them so clearly, is like all of the water marbling that people would do with that collection specifically. But they were so stunning and I just regret not getting them. I mean, to be fair, if I did get them, they probably like would be faded by now, but they were so beautiful and just like one of those collections that was just everywhere. This is another brand that I'm not really sure is like around anymore. I mean, I know that they had to stop making that collection because I think like the pink was discontinued, like, you know, they stopped making the pigment, kind of similar to what happened with China Glaze last summer. And pink neons definitely tend to fade pretty badly. So, you know, I'm not surprised that it ended up being like an unstable pigment or something, but I would love to see it come back. I feel like that would be such a great, like, nostalgic collection that a lot of people would be excited for, especially if you were like, you know, in the indie space back then and you're like familiar with it. So that pretty much wraps up the polishes that I would love to see come back. I know there are so many more that I could have included because we have seen so much, like even from polish pickup alone, there are so many shades that could potentially come back, especially like through rewind, but I didn't want to include any like of the polish pickup shades, especially because those are more, I don't want to say unlikely to come back, but because like the makers have this contractual obligation or whatever where they are PPU exclusive shades, they're only able to really come back through rewind versus a brand just, you know, releasing a collection and then years later people are like, oh hey, actually that collection was really good, maybe you should re-release it. Like they're able to do that a lot easier, if that makes sense. And personally, I am a fan of seeing re-released shades. Like I know it can get tiring, especially if it's like month after month, but in certain cases, you know, there are brands that have put out these collections years ago that can still hold up really well if they were like brought back again later on. So I personally would love to see more of that. Obviously, I know it's good business to just put out new stuff all the time, but you know, that can also get boring in a way too, even though it's new. I sometimes would just prefer seeing a solid re-release because it's like a fan favorite or if it's like fan voted. I wish we'd see more of that, honestly. But yeah, I would love to know what you think of this video, especially if you have any of the shades that I talked about today. But of course, I would love to hear some shades that you missed out on, that you're still like lusting over and you haven't really found a good enough dupe for it yet. Because again, while there definitely is a lot of overlap that we see nowadays, sometimes there are some shades that like just don't hit the mark 100%. So I totally understand like still wanting this one specific shade, even though there are others on the market that look kind of similar, you know? So make sure to let me know what you think down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.